This is Brian Patton. Today I wanted to talk about AdminSDHolder. You'll also see stuff referred to as the admin count attribute being changed. This is a persistence technique. It's really about account manipulation. It's something an attacker may do to stay in an account for a long period of time. Sean Metcalf, you can look at adsecurity.org, he posted about it back in 2015. For those that don't understand exactly what the SD holder is, I figured I'd start with a quick demo, kind of highlighting why it was created to begin with. So, Jason, I know you're on the call and you may do delegation for a customer. Natively, we could do this. Do you have any sample accounts tied Corp with no access?
No, I don't.
I'm just going to pick something. I'll do something that starts with the letter A, and we have Aaron Mitchell.
Yeah.
This is an account that does not have elevator rights to begin with. So natively, I may want to delegate, okay, this account can change the password or whatever on all objects in this directory. And I'll go ahead and click Finish. And this account now has that permission for this location. But this can be problematic. If we have a domain admin, for example, that's in here, does that mean that account can now change the password on a domain admin? And the answer is no, because these objects that are considered protected or sensitive are protected by what's called the AdminSDHolder. So certain different objects like domain admins, account operators, there's a listing of different groups in Active Directory. If they're a member of one of those different objects, they're protected, and this account right here, this permission set, really acts as a template for all the different objects that are considered quote unquote protected. So this is the template set of accounts that we apply to those objects regardless of where they are contained within your delegation model.
So Brian, the admin SD, what does the SD stand for?
Security Descriptor. And coming into that, it runs on an hourly basis. So if this permission set right here changes every hour on the hour, even if you natively went to one of those privileged accounts, it would write that permission back to it exactly the way it was. I have a new user account that I did for Security Guardian demos, Micah Parsons. You will see here, he is protected by the AdminSDHolder. So even if I changed his permissions right now, it will in fact change. But this is the template set. You can see Sally Helper right here. That account is an AdminSDHolder. So if I changed it here, it'll change. The next time the SD prop service runs, that template set will be put back in place. So that's what happens to all those different accounts. And Micah Parsons is a member of this. And I'll show you like my Security Guardian demo, because he was added to this different group right here, which is nested into another group that is being protected by the SD prop service. So this is a very serious backdoor. This permission set gets applied to all of those different privileged objects on a regular interval. Now, if Micah Parsons was removed from that group that is protected, that attribute will in fact stay the same. And some people are like, hey, well, why is that the case? And let me pull up a document. And the reason why it's not changing, there's more information on it. You can see this different link right here. But why is it not decremented when they are removed? And it's plain and simple. Most customers said we don't want it removed. In fact, back in Windows 2000's initial design, some people were querying like, yeah, if an account was an administrator, they could have inadvertently created a different backdoor, right? So we don't necessarily want to make them down to zero because maybe they weren't like a domain admin, but they were a member of account operators. And they created an object. And as soon as you've taken that template set away, well, they could still do something to that other object, because once you create an object, you own that different object if you're not a member of domain admins group. So this is really not being decremented to remove some of those different backdoors. I know some people in today's day and age are considering like just-in-time administration or just-enough administration, those types of concepts. But for regular accounts like this, I still believe, and we should share with our customers, that this account inadvertently got those different rights. Best practice is actually to disable it or delete it. Only tier 0 accounts should actually be put into a PAM solution. They shouldn't necessarily do it with their regular user accounts. Least privilege may be getting configured with stuff at a lower tier, but not for tier 0 type objects. Now, looking into some of our other different tooling we have, I did a guide a couple of years ago over different recommendations I always recommend getting protected. So first things first, protection of the AdminSDHolder. I typically will always recommend that this get locked down. And you can see Matthew Vincent's got an exclusion account. You also need to make sure this NT Authority anonymous logon allows as an exception as well. This will allow the SD prop service to do its job on an hourly basis. This is the context it'll look like it's running under in change order, ODA, those different products. We actually learned about this because we were protecting all of this. We had a customer doing that. And then all of a sudden the SD prop service wasn't working properly against some different new objects, which is why it's vital to have this as an exclusion when we're getting this protection template configured. Now, another thing we added in change order a couple of years ago was the ability to look where admin count 1 is actually getting added into the product. So to kind of highlight some of that stuff, I'm going to go into on-demand audit and show you what that looks like. Any questions so far, Jason or Goswin?
So I didn't see the event. Can you show us the event that we're actually tracking in Change Auditor?
I'll show you the different event that we have in ODA, okay. Just because it's coming from Change Auditor to begin with.
Right. I do have a question on the protection template as well. Within the wizard, there wasn't anything special that you've done. It's just you went through the wizard and then just click next throughout the screens and exit it out, correct? There isn't anything special like we would do, for example, with NTDS did protection as far as...
No, we don't have to audit first, just protect it.
Right.
I usually do recommend getting an alert template configured for any changes to protected objects. Case in point, we had the Hafnium thing a couple of years ago, and we had an issue because Ian Lindsay was doing a patch upgrade, which effectively changed the different SD holder permission sets. We couldn't do it, and he was struggling with it, but I got an email alert knowing that it had happened, and we finally figured out, like, okay, you should always know when this is happening because you may need to update that with another update that Microsoft is doing in the future.
Sure. Okay.
So looking through here, I'm just going to go through some of the different searches we have. And all admin account changes in the last 30 days. This is the admin count changing from 0 to 1. You can see here, Peter is making some different changes on this different account right here. This is telling me that it's an admin count change that occurred, but Change Auditor already had a search out here. You can look under security. You can see domain security. There's a built-in search we've had in there for years showing changes to the admin permission set or AdminSDHolder permission set right there. Peter changed the permission set of AdminSDHolder. You can see exactly what changed here for on-premises. This is much more concerning than when I see a change to the admin count attribute getting from 0 to 1. We may see that from time to time based upon an accidental error, which kind of leads me to Security Guardian. And Let me go and pull that up. And I already have this configured within Titan Corp. And being part I like to focus on my different demos is Drift. So I usually talk about how, okay, if I don't know what this account is, what's it really doing? I see the C. Johnstone. We talked about the M. Parsons account earlier. I know what this is, so I normally would just certify it. If I didn't know what it is, I can investigate it. And when I'm doing my investigations, I'll find the activity related to this. So look at the different attributes here, or the events that are occurring. We have a chain of different things that I'm observing. So see the permission added? Remember how I mentioned the NT authority anonymous logon? And that different change that we have? This is that different change that is occurring. So earlier you saw the change from Peter Vigliano and the Windows certificate service. See that right there? He made that change, the AdminSDHolder. This is where it's stamping that one change that Peter did across all the objects. It wasn't even just M. Parsons, it was every account that was protected. But here's all those different entries now applied to that M. Parsons account itself. But when this account was created, they were considered privileged. See this other NT authority anonymous stuff? This is the other permission sets getting added out there. You can see this remove permission where self can't do certain stuff because it's being protected. And as I'm scrolling through, I think I had a demo before. I'm like, yeah, I know this is from the SD prop service, right? That's what's generating all of these different events right here. So I'm doing a little bit of digging, right? I'm going through. I will see this other different thing. This is the event right before where user was added into a different group. And it's one of these different things that's nested in administrators that ultimately made him, admin count 1, and now that SD prop service is getting applied to it.
How is this bubbling up on the critical activity? Because I would probably, the minute I go into Security Guardian, my eyes are gonna go to the critical activity side.
Looking at the critical activity, I mean, first off, this is the drift, but we do have some different findings that are occurring here in Security Guardian. And some of these kind of mixed, are they really that bad or not? Here's user accounts in protected groups that are not being protected. So this is where something like with the SD prop service and the AdminSDHolder is not being applied to some specific objects right here. So these different objects down here, for some reason, the AdminSDHolder is not being applied to those different objects. The other one in here, I see some other ordinary user accounts with hidden privileges. This is most likely, in most customer environments, not a malicious activity, but an accidental error where maybe somebody at some point added this user into a group that was privileged, it got stamped. They may have undid it, but these accounts are still being protected because of that. Or one time they were compromised, they elevated their permissions and no longer had it out there. So something needs to be chosen as far as what to do with those different objects. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a combination between what you saw on the left-hand side as far as like investigating a specific user that Peter created and then looking at the critical activity side.
And these are the groups. Anything that's in these groups or nesting these groups, these are what are being known as quote unquote protected. The AdminSDHolder will be applied to any of these different objects, as well as like the protected users group and some other different sensitive groups have been added out there as well. This does not look like the complete list to me. So AdminSDHolder, that is definitely a sneaky persistence thing. When I'm looking at Security Guardian in here, it's not really always necessarily a big event if somebody accidentally got the SD prop permission applied against that different object. It just means that template set has changed, right? You may want to be able to change that back. It's completely accidental, hopefully in a short period of time, so they couldn't necessarily do anything if they actually had those rights. But just because they were a member of a group and potentially had elevated rights doesn't necessarily mean they did anything. So if we were tracking that entire life cycle of that different object, which we can do with, on-demand audit, as well as change audit for just on-premises type stuff, if they never use their account to create an object or anything of that nature, I may just choose to take them out of that privileged group or that group that's making them privileged, however it is, and then nullify it if they'd already been using their different account for certain things. The only challenge is if they actually had used their rights, they created an object, or they created a new file, for example, and they weren't a domain admin, but part of another privileged group. Well, if just in their account, they're going to lose access to those different files. So I don't feel like the admin counting link 1 is as big of an issue. What's more of an issue is any changes that AdminSDHolder permission set to begin with. Are there any other questions?
Now, if you go back to that SD prop, what does it show under? How do I fix it? Does it show anything?
Yeah, I mean, look, how do I fix this? Well, we can remove them.
Okay.
And this is counterproductive with
That's what you just said. I just want to make sure it's actually.
Yeah, will be recommended by Microsoft, which is, well, if it's been like that, really you shouldn't use that account anymore.
Right.
So you look through here, hey, this is where the best practice located here is different than what we're saying. And we did bring this up to the dev team. They may or may not change it. The key thing I want to point out is the understanding so you know exactly what's being said. Yeah. And ideally, you look at this different thing, read through what Ned Pyle put in here as well. There's some great different knowledge about what AdminSDHolder is really all about. Also, it's always recommended to read what Sean Metcalf does about it. Now, the default thing right here is AdminSDHolder applies every 60 minutes. You can get to manually kick off right now using this run protect admin group tasks, but there's really no need to trigger it. Are there any other questions?
Nothing from my end.
Nothing from me.
All right, thanks. Hopefully this was helpful.